The day everyone believed I destroyed my family began like any other ordinary morning except for the rain, which had been falling since midnight and showed no signs of stopping, and the cars, which lined the long winding driveway of the Hart estate, like a funeral procession waiting for a body that hadn't yet arrived. I remember standing at the gates for what felt like hours, watching the reporters huddle under their umbrellas, their cameras aimed at the mansion like weapons, their faces hungry for a story they had already written without asking me a single question. My photograph was everywhere, on the front page of every newspaper, on every news channel, on every social media feed. The headlines screamed the same thing in different ways. Youngest Hart son, accused of corporate espionage, Elias Hart, traitor or pawn. The son who sold his family's secrets. I hadn't been arrested. The police had questioned me for 8 hours, and then they had let me go because there was no evidence, because I hadn't done anything wrong, because the only thing I was guilty of was trusting the wrong people and loving a family that had never truly loved me back. But the headlines didn't care about evidence. They cared about ratings, and my face sold papers. Walking through the front doors of the Hart estate that morning felt like walking into a different world, one where I was a stranger in a house I had grown up in, a ghost haunting the halls of my own childhood. The grand foyer was colder than I remembered. Even with the heating system that costs more to run than most people earned in a year, the marble floors gleamed under the crystal chandelier, reflecting the pale gray light of the rain-soaked morning. The servants moved in silence, their eyes carefully averted, their footsteps quick and nervous. My relatives were everywhere. Aunts and uncles who had never cared about me suddenly filled the drawing rooms, their voices hushed, their eyes sparkling with barely concealed glee. They were pretending to mourn, but I could see the truth in their faces. They were enjoying this. They had always enjoyed watching the youngest son fail. My mother was standing by the grand window in the east wing, her back to me, her silhouette rigid and cold. She didn't turn when I entered. She didn't speak. She just stared out at the rain, her hands clasped so tightly that her knuckles were white, and I realized she was trying to pretend I wasn't there. My father was in his study, the door closed, the sound of his voice muffled through the wood. He was on the phone, his tone sharp and impatient, and I heard my name spoken once, twice, 3 times, each time followed by a heavy sigh. My older brother, Nathaniel, was the one who finally acknowledged me. He was standing in the hallway, his arms crossed, his jaw tight, his eyes filled with something I had never seen before. Disgust. He was looking at me like I was a stranger, like I was something. He had scraped off his shoe. He threw the newspaper onto the floor in front of me. The front page was face up, my photograph staring back at me, the headline screaming words I still couldn't process. Explain, he said. His voice was flat, emotionless, like he was asking a stranger for directions. Explain to me why your name is all over this. Explain to me why the police questioned you for 8 hours. Explain to me why our father is on the phone with our lawyers instead of looking at his own son. I opened my mouth to speak, but the words wouldn't come. Not because I was guilty, because I was exhausted. 8 hours of interrogation. 8 hours of repeating the same answers over and over. 8 hours of watching strangers decide my fate based on whispers and rumors and carefully planted lies. I wanted to tell Nathaniel that I hadn't done it. I wanted to tell him that I was innocent. I wanted to tell him that someone had framed me, someone who knew exactly how to make me look guilty, someone who had been planning this for months, maybe years. I wanted to tell him that I had been set up, that I was a victim, that I needed him to believe me. But before I could say any of that, my mother spoke without turning around. Don't bother explaining, Nathaniel. He's already made his choice. Her voice was cold, dismissive, like I was a stranger she was trying to forget. The damage is done. The company is in ruins. Our reputation is destroyed. And she finally turned, her eyes meeting mine. And I saw something I had never seen before. Hatred. He did this to us, to his own family. For what? Money? Revenge? Attention? I wanted to scream. I wanted to fall to my knees and beg her to listen. Instead, I just stood there, frozen, feeling the weight of her words crush me like stones. Mother, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I didn't do it. I swear. I would never. Don't, she said, holding up her hand. Don't you dare lie to me. Not now. Not after everything. She walked past me without another word, her heels clicking against the marble floor, each step a nail in the coffin of my innocence. The door slammed behind her, and I was alone with Nathaniel, who was still looking at me like I was something he no longer recognized. I used to admire you, he said quietly. When we were kids, I thought you were the smartest person I knew. I thought you were going to do great things. I thought you were going to be better than me. He shook his head, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. I was wrong. You're just like everyone else. Just another person who couldn't resist taking what didn't belong to them. He turned and walked away, leaving me standing in the hallway, the newspaper at my feet, my brother's words echoing in my ears. I wanted to follow him. I wanted to grab his arm and make him listen, but my legs wouldn't move, my voice wouldn't work. I just stood there, staring at my photograph on the front page, and I felt something inside me crack, something fundamental, something I had spent 26 years building. The trust I had in my family, the belief that they would always believe in me, the certainty that no matter what happened, I would never be alone. All of it was gone, vanished, like smoke in the wind. I walked through the mansion, passing the rooms I had grown up in, the study where my father taught me how to play chess. I remembered sitting on his lap, barely tall enough to see the board, his big hands guiding mine as I moved the pieces. Always think 3 moves ahead, he used to say. Never let them see your weakness. I had thought that was good advice. Now I realized it was preparation. He had been preparing me for the day when I would become his enemy. The dining room where my mother used to make me sit up straight and fix my tie before important dinners. You're a heart, she would say, smoothing down my collar. You have a reputation to uphold. I had never understood why that mattered. Now I understood. The reputation was the only thing that mattered, not the person underneath, not the love, just the image. The garden where Nathaniel and I used to chase each other, laughing, our voices echoing through the hedges like music. We were inseparable as children. He was my hero, my protector, the person I looked up to more than anyone. Now he looked at me like I was dirt, like I had betrayed everything we had ever been to each other. The memories were everywhere, filling every room, haunting every corner. They reminded me of a time when I believed I was loved, when I believed I belonged, when I believed that family meant something more than blood and obligation. But those memories were lies. They were painted over the cracks in the foundation, hiding the truth that I was only now beginning to see. I had never truly belonged here. I had always been an outsider, a guest in my own home, tolerated because I was useful, and discarded when I became inconvenient. I kept walking, my footsteps echoing in the empty corridors. I passed the family portraits, generations of hearts staring down at me with judgmental eyes. I passed the study where my father had locked himself away, the door still closed, the sound of his voice still muffled. I passed the drawing room where my relatives were still whispering, still pretending to mourn, and I realized something devastating, something that made my heart stop and my blood run cold. They had already chosen what to believe. They had already decided I was guilty. They didn't care about the truth. They didn't care about the investigation. They didn't care about me. All they cared about was appearances. All they cared about was protecting the family name from further scandal. And I was the sacrifice, the scapegoat, the son who would be thrown to the wolves so the rest of them could survive. I stopped in front of the grand mirror in the foyer. My reflection stared back at me, pale and hollow, my eyes dark with exhaustion. I didn't recognize myself. The person looking back at me was a stranger, someone I had never met, someone I never wanted to become. Is this who you are now? I whispered to my reflection. Is this who they made you? My reflection didn't answer. It never did. I walked back to the hallway where Nathaniel had confronted me. The newspaper was still on the floor, my photograph still staring up at me. I picked it up, folded it carefully, and tucked it under my arm. I didn't know why. Maybe because I needed a reminder. Maybe because I wanted to remember exactly what they had done to me. Maybe because I was already planning my escape. The family lawyer, Mr. Park, was standing near the entrance, his briefcase clutched to his chest, his eyes carefully avoiding mine. He had known me since I was a child. He had watched me grow up. He had attended my birthday parties and congratulated me on my graduation. But now he couldn't even look at me. He just stood there, his face pale, his hands trembling slightly, like he was hiding something, like he was guilty, like he knew exactly who had framed me and was too afraid to say anything. I walked toward him. Mr. Park, I said, my voice calm. Do you know something? Is there something you're not telling me? He flinched. His eyes darted to the side, avoiding mine. I don't know what you mean, Elias. I'm just here to what? To watch my family destroy me, to make sure the evidence is properly buried. Elias, please. I can't. Can't what? Can't tell me the truth. Can't help me? He didn't answer. He just shook his head and walked away, his footsteps quick and nervous, disappearing around the corner like a ghost, fleeing the light. I watched him go, and I felt something settle in my chest. Cold certainty. He knew who had done this, and he was too afraid to say anything. The business partners were worse. They were gathered in the east drawing room, their voices low, their eyes sharp. They looked at me like I was a disease, like I was contagious, like I would infect them with my shame. I walked past them, and one of them, a man named Mr. Han, who had always been friendly to me, suddenly found something fascinating on the ceiling. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He wouldn't acknowledge my presence. He just stood there, pretending I didn't exist, just like everyone else. I felt the walls closing in. The mansion that had once felt so grand and welcoming now felt like a cage. The hallways were too narrow. The ceilings were too low. The air was too thick with betrayal. I needed to get out. I needed to breathe. I needed to escape the suffocating weight of their judgment. I walked to the front doors, my hand on the handle, and I heard a voice behind me. Elias, Wait, I turned. It was my mother. She was standing at the top of the staircase, her face pale, her eyes red. She looked like she had been crying. Maybe she had. Maybe she still cared. Maybe there was still hope. Is there something you want to say? I asked. She hesitated. She looked at me, and for a moment, I saw something flicker in her eyes, doubt, regret, a crack in the armor of her anger. I want to know why, she said. I want to know why you did this too. US, I didn't do anything. Don't lie to me. I'm not lying. I've never lied to you. Not once in my entire life. She stared at me, and I could see the war raging inside her. The part of her that wanted to believe me. The part of her that was too afraid to trust me. The part of her that had already chosen what she wanted to believe. She opened her mouth to speak, then closed it, then turned and walked away. That was the moment I knew. I was alone. Completely, utterly alone. My family had abandoned me. My friends had disappeared. My future had been stolen, and there was no one coming to save me. I walked out of the mansion. The rain was still falling, cold and relentless, soaking through my clothes, plastering my hair to my forehead. The reporters rushed toward me, their cameras flashing, their voices overlapping, their questions sharp and cruel. Elias, did you do it? Is it true you sold company secrets? Are you going to be arrested? How do you feel about your family's reaction? I didn't answer. I just kept walking, my head down, my hands in my pockets. The rain was cold, but I didn't feel it. I couldn't feel anything. And then I saw it. Across the street, parked under the shadow of an old oak tree, was a car, a luxury car, black and sleek and completely out of place in this neighborhood. The windows were tinted. The engine was idling. A man in a black suit was standing beside the rear door, his posture straight, his face expressionless. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at the reporters. He just stood there, waiting for me. I hesitated. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know what he wanted, but something in my chest, something, desperate and broken, and clinging to the last shred of hope told me to walk toward him. So I did. The reporters followed, their cameras still flashing, their questions still shouting. I ignored them. I walked across the street, my feet splashing through puddles, my heart pounding in my chest. The man in the black suit opened the rear door without saying a word. I looked inside. The car was empty, except for a single envelope resting on the leather seat. It was thick and cream-colored, the kind of paper that costs more than most people's rent. Across the front, in elegant handwriting, were 6 words. I've finally found you again. Elias. I stared at the envelope. My hands were shaking. My heart was racing. I didn't know who had written it. I didn't know who was waiting for me on the other side of this mystery. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. My family had abandoned me. My future had been stolen. And the only way forward was to take a leap of faith into the unknown. I climbed into the car. The door closed behind me. The reporter's cameras flashed one last time before the car pulled away, disappearing into the rain. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. There was nothing left for me in that mansion. Nothing but memories and betrayal, and the ghosts of a love that had never truly existed. The car was warm and silent, the leather seats soft, the air smelling faintly of sandalwood and something else, something familiar, something I couldn't place. I opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a single sheet of paper, the handwriting elegant and confident. I've been watching you for years, Elias, watching you grow, watching you struggle, watching you survive. I always knew your family was blind. I always knew they would eventually hurt you. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you sooner, but I'm here now. I've always been here. Trust me, please. I'm the only one who ever will. There was no signature, no name, no explanation. Just those words burning into my heart like a brand. I read the letter 3 times, my hands shaking, my eyes burning with tears I refused to let fall. I didn't know who had written it. I didn't know who was waiting for me, but I felt something I hadn't felt in days, weeks, maybe, years. Hope, fragile and dangerous, and completely irrational, but hope nonetheless. I folded the letter carefully, tucked it into my pocket, and looked out the window at the rain-soaked city. The car drove on, through streets I didn't recognize, toward a destination I couldn't imagine. The man in the black suit didn't speak. The driver didn't speak. The car was silent, except for the soft hum of the engine and the steady rhythm of the rain, and I sat there, alone with my thoughts, replaying the events of the past 24 hours in my mind. I thought about my mother's cold eyes, my father's closed door, Nathaniel's disgust, the relatives who pretended to mourn, the lawyer who couldn't look at me, the business partner who suddenly found the ceiling fascinating, and I realized something that made my stomach turn. They had all been too quick to believe the worst, too eager to abandon me, too relieved to have a scapegoat. They had been waiting for this, waiting for an excuse to get rid of me, and someone had given them one, who had framed me, who had leaked the confidential company information, who had planted the evidence that made me look guilty. I didn't know, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whoever they were still out there, still free, still dangerous, and they had succeeded in destroying my life. But they hadn't destroyed me. Not yet, not completely. I looked out the window at the rain. at the city lights blurred by water, at the reflections of myself in the glass. I thought about the letter in my pocket, the mysterious sender who had been watching me for years, the person who had said, "I finally found you again, Elias." The use of the word again haunted me. It suggested a history, a connection, a past I couldn't quite remember. I tried to think of everyone I had ever known, every friend, every acquaintance, every fleeting encounter that might have meant more than I realized, but I came up empty. The face of the mysterious boy from years ago kept surfacing in my memory, but I couldn't place him, couldn't name him, couldn't remember anything except the promise he had made. "If the whole world turns against you, I'll still believe you." Had he been watching me all these years? Had he been waiting for this moment? And if so, why? I didn't have answers. I only had questions. And a car driving me toward a destination I couldn't imagine. The rain kept falling. The city kept blurring past. And I sat there, my hand in my pocket, clutching the letter like a lifeline. And I made a silent promise to myself. I would find the truth. I would clear my name. I would expose whoever had done this to me. And I would never, ever trust anyone again. Not my family. Not my so-called friends. Not even the mysterious person who had sent this letter. Trust was a weakness, a vulnerability, a weapon that could be used against me, and I would never let anyone use it again. The car turned down a narrow street, the buildings growing older, the lights growing dimmer. I didn't recognize this part of the city. I didn't know where we were going, but I didn't ask. I just watched, silent and still, as the world outside the window changed. The rain continued to fall. The car continued to drive, and in my pocket, the letter burned like a promise I was too afraid to keep. I didn't know who was waiting for me at the end of this road. I didn't know if I could trust them. I didn't know if I would survive whatever came next. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I had lost everything. My family, my home, my future, my identity. Everything I had ever known was gone. Vanished. Like smoke in the wind. And the only thing left was the unknown. The mysterious, the terrifying possibility of a new beginning. I didn't know if I was ready for it. I didn't know if I would ever be ready. But I had no choice. The car stopped. The man in the black suit opened the door, and I stepped out into the rain, into the darkness, into the waiting arms of a mystery I was desperate to solve.
Okay, so that was the end of the chapter 1. Thank you so much for staying with me until the very end. As the creator of this story, I wanted to take a moment to share why I chose to begin Elia's story this way. At first glance, this chapter looked like a story about betrayal, wealth, and family conflict. But underneath all of that, it really is asking a much bigger question. What happened when the people who are supposed to know you best stop believing in you? One thing I wanted to explore is how quickly people can form opinion before the truth has the chance to speak. In Aria's case, he wasn't convicted of a crime. He wasn't proven guilty, yet the headline had already judged him. A stranger had already condemned him, and even his own family chose public opinion over years of trust. Sadly, this isn't something that exists only in fiction. Like in today's world, information travel incredibly fast, but the truth often take much longer to catch up. That's why it is so important remember that accusation and the facts are not always the same thing. Looking at a headline or hearing a rumor is really enough to understand someone's entire story. Another message I wanted this chapter to convey is the danger of allowing reputation to become more important than people. Throughout the Hart family, we see household that has everything like money can buy wealth, influence, status, and power, but almost no emotional connection. Every decision revolve around protecting the family name instead of protecting the family itself. When reputation become more valuable than love, trust begin to disappear. Eventually, people stop seeing each other as son, daughter, brother, or parents and start seeing each other as risk, liability, or tools. I think that's one of the greatest tragedies this chapter tries to illustrate. You may also have noticed that Elias doesn't spend this chapter trying to prove his innocence by shouting louder than everyone else. Instead, we experience his confusion, disappointment, and heartbreak from his own perspective. I wanted readers to sit with those emotions because betrayal isn't always loud. Sometimes the deepest pain comes from silence, from a door that never opened, from a person refusing to meet your eyes, or from realizing that the people you trusted the most had already decided your fate before you even allowed to speak. Like at the same time, this chapter isn't meant to say that families are naturally cruel or that trust should never exist. Rather, it's meant to remind us that trust should be built on understanding, communication, and evidence, not fear, assumption, or public pressure. Healthy relationship, whether they are between family or friends or partner, require people to listen before they judge. One honest conversation can sometimes prevent you of like years of regret. So that was the end of this story. So share your theories and prediction in the comments below. I genuinely like reading your ideas because every reader notices different clues and sometimes your theories are just as fascinating as the story itself. If you enjoyed this chapter and want to continue Elias' journey through betrayal, mystery, and family secret and the search for the truth, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching this video. Bye bye.